This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
We are several days now into the search for Nancy Guthrie. As we are recording this, she has not been found. I can only hope and pray that by the time you do see this, maybe that has changed. But just so you know, we're discussing it from this perspective of what we know at this moment in time. Law enforcement has released an official timeline showing her doorbell camera disconnected at 1:47 a.m. Software detected a person at 2:12 a.m. with no video available, and her pacemaker app disconnected from her phone at about 2:28 a.m. That's the digital footprint that we understand publicly at this moment in time that the authorities have released. The sheriff has denied reports of forced entry and says no cameras were smashed or destroyed, contrary to other reporting that some outlets have done thus far. Interesting. Purported ransom notes were sent to media outlets, not the family, and the FBI says no proof of life has been provided and no follow-up communication has come in as of yet. One arrest has already been made for an imposter ransom demand. To understand the chaos of this, what these behavioral patterns reveal, Robin Dreek, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. There's a lot to unpack. Let's start with the doorbell camera. Disconnecting at 1:47 a.m., software detecting the person at 2:12, and 25 minutes later, Nancy's pacemaker disconnecting from her phone at 2:28 a.m. That is a 41-minute window from the first sign of intrusion, if we're to understand that there was some sort of signal that was registered on that Ring camera or the Nest camera up until that 2:28 time mark of basically her watch disconnecting from her pacemaker. Basically out of Bluetooth range is what that is telling you. What does that pace tell you about how this person operated, their level of planning, their comfort in the environment, whether this was someone who'd been there before? 40 minutes, it seems, at the property at the very least.
Yeah, they were moving with a purpose, it seemed like. And I mean, just that kind of intricacy of knowing what needed to be done to try to cover footprints really says this was planned out. And when you look at these types of cases where it's, and again, that's where I think we got a two-prong attack when it comes to the investigation. Was it an intentional abduction case, or was it a home invasion robbery gone sideways? And the stats are still playing out, even with this. When they put out the timeline, the sheriff gave that great press briefing not too long ago, as of this recording. I was originally like, oh my gosh, was it targeted for abduction? But when you really plug those numbers back in and you look at the stats are still saying that it is a robbery, home invasion gone sideways, and the panic that happens when it goes sideways of taking her. I think I'm holding to, I think that's what this is. If we're only based on the laws of probability of what we know in the public right now. But a lot of planning went in because they knew about, from what we are observing, they knew about ring cams. They didn't smash them. They removed them. The pacemaker issue and her medication, I think, is going to be really key. And that, I think they know that, whether any was taken with her or not, because in all these cases, and whether it's this case or other cases we've covered, Tony, the probability that it's a known entity, either 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation from her, that's what they're doing right now. They're identifying all the people that were aware of her location, and more importantly, as we're seeing from this timeline, aware of her routine. And so that's what they're really zeroing in on.
I'm going to say this because it's not something that I think I've really heard floated out there much yet, but this is being treated as a kidnapping, basically.
Yeah,
we don't even know that.
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, unless there's something that tells us she got out of there alive, which, as far as we understand right now we don't have that. If there's no camera out, if there's nothing that we know that she left, that she was not there, and that we saw with our own eyes. Brian Enton's reporting with News Nation. We saw it. There was blood right outside of the door when they, for whatever reason, opened the scene, and we'll talk about that too. The assumption that she was kidnapped is there. And that's the thing that makes it so weird, and that's what everybody looks at going, the odds of someone abducting an 84-year-old woman. I understand the area where the celebrity of Savannah, maybe it is something of that connection there, or does it make more logical sense, and statistic-wise, that this was a home invasion gone wrong? And I hate to say it, but did Nancy Guthrie not leave that house alive?
Yeah,
and then it's more of a body cover up, and it's a concealing of the crime. It's not an abduction. That's
what the stats are leaning towards.
Yeah.
So there's less. I mean, just think about these. And the reason why what behavior people do is we look at laws of averages to kind of create filters for where we're going to focus our efforts. So here's law enforcement getting hundreds, if not thousands, of leads in, some fictional, some real, some deep fakes, whatever it is. And so you have to create filters. And one way you create filters is you look at averages over periods of time. And here's the averages for an abduction. There are less than or right around 100 abductions a year for ransom in the entire country. And if you look at, and that sounds like it might be a lot, but if you look at the fact that the number of homicides there are a year that are not covered by media at all, or even solved, we're talking in the mid to high thousands, tens of thousands sometimes of homicides. I mean, there's a lot of crime out there that just isn't covered because it doesn't reach the level of interesting to people, right? Yeah. And so this one, think about it. There's less than 100 abductions a year for ransom. And out of all those abductions, the vast majority, like 99% of them, are family related, child care, child custody related, or child trafficking related. So that then reduces it even more. And then when you add on top of it her age and also the notoriety, it reduces it even more. This is such, if it was a targeted abduction, and again, it could be, because that's how stats are made, because there's outliers. If this is like some people are thinking it is such an extreme outlier, which would be this is why we're in uncharted kind of chaotic territory, because this is a big, weird outlier. Matter of fact, if we hadn't had any ransom thing coming at all, I'd say this is just a home invasion, but this was a home invasion gone sideways. And under the heat of the moment, things went sideways, and they took the body, they took her alive, whatever it was, because of fear, didn't know what to do, and they freaked out. Which can happen.
If it wasn't Savannah Guthrie's mother, would we be having that? I mean, I'm not in any way saying that as a negative. I'm saying it as the celebrity aspect of it. If there wasn't that aspect of it, a celebrity, someone took the loved one of them, it must be for money. It must be a kidnapping. It's kind of our knee-jerk reaction. That's like what we've been trained to think in, movies and in real life. I mean, this has happened before. But if it was just, whoever, someone who was not well known, would we be thinking abduction?
It's a fair point, a fair question. I still think it would get this very similar coverage, only because it is so rare and so unusual, and media typically picks up on things that are rare and unusual, especially in the area of true crime like this.
But would we be thinking abduction, or would we be more on, were they murdered and taken out of the house?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think the only thing that made it abduction related is the fact that there's this ransom stuff that's come in. And now there is,
but for the first 48, 72 hours, there wasn't. And everybody was saying abduction too.
That's why I'm still leaning away from not being targeted abduction. I think it was abduction after the fact is what I'm thinking. Yeah. And here's why. So the only thing that gave me even pause on that and not even as much anymore, is they said the one that came into TMZ also, the way, just the probability of a ransom coming in through media is not what they do. Is not what abductors do. As rare as abductions are, that's not the way you typically deliver a ransom note, unless it's for criminal notoriety. It's a look at me moment. but we're not having a manifesto. We're not having a look at me moment yet. That's why everything is completely sideways from what we're expecting. And what it is, in other words, when the reality doesn't fit the narrative that we are thinking it will be with abduction, you just got to go back to what the baseline stats are telling you was the highest probability, and that's what investigators are following up. The only thing, and I'm sorry, Tony, one last thing. The only thing with the ransom that gave me pause to still have it in my mind is when they said there was a lot of details there that would have been unknown to anyone that was trying to do a deep fake on it. With the exception of if this was someone that knew the house and was targeting, they would know some of those details already, because the only thing that they leaked out was they knew about her Apple Watch and they knew about a floodlight outside. There might be some other details in there, but that would be known by anyone that was in a circle around her too.
That'd be known by anyone who knows she's a homeowner and you're taking a guess that she has an Apple Watch. You know what I mean? And she's been on social media and you can probably, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can glean, you know, and then take a wild guess that the odds are they're there. And I imagine if you're listing off just for example, we haven't seen the notes, so don't anybody take it like that. But if you were to list off like 20 things and let's say you hit 10, that's going to be deemed a fairly credible note still, as long as you're not like super detailed on it. And it's like, you know, and the odds of hitting that will probably be not that hard to do. So, I mean, I get the end of this happens. You're going to get fake things like this that are going to come in. The sheriff has explicitly denied reports of forced entry and says that no cameras were smashed or destroyed. The doorbell camera was disconnected, apparently, not broken. I'm interested in this because there's been some weird. This whole thing has felt weird from the beginning, and weird doesn't necessarily mean, you know, something nefarious or wrong. It can just mean incompetence. It can mean, you know, we're not used to doing an investigation like this, and there's hiccups along the way. But that to me has been a little weird. I mean, I trust Ashley's reporting. I do. And I trust Brian's reporting. And if you're going to go and publicly and say you got a source that says this or that, it's usually coming from somewhere. I don't think she was pulling that one off of like Reddit or something of that nature and running with it. And now I'm not saying I agree with the assumptions or what some of the headlines were. But especially when it comes to the individuals. But I do. There's a stark difference between what some of the reporting has been and what he's saying, but there's also been stark questions in judgment from this office as well. Like, I don't know, releasing the crime scene within 48 hours of it happening and reporters traipsing around it. So I don't know. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, so the releasing the crime scene and going back in is pretty common.
Yeah.
Because when you have different agencies start getting involved, they're going to be looking for different things in a different way.
But it's an active scene. I mean, they didn't find her yet.
No,
well,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's common.
It's common. Okay, I hear you.
There's a big difference between.
You're not arguing it. Yeah. Okay.
Right. There's a big difference between they should or shouldn't, and it's common. Common just means it happens pretty frequently.
Sure.
And it could be missteps. I mean, I thought the sheriff did a decent job of explaining that during the presser today. Yeah. Which makes sense. And here's how it makes sense. So should he have kept it locked down? Yes, he really should have, because as you know, this is going to keep escalating. You're going to want to maintain that control of that, so it doesn't happen in other cases like we have where people corrupt sites. And then it ruins it. So, I mean, just having Brian Etten on the front steps, being able to look at blood on I mean, that should not happen yet.
Yeah.
So, and the sheriff, I thought, did a good job. And that's why I'm always assessing all the information we get, who we're getting from. I think he's done a good job being transparent and owning his behavior. He's got reps doing these types of things. Yeah. Because he said, hey, I'll take that and I'll do better next time. He goes, you know, we Monday morning quarterback, all this stuff, I will get better. So I like he didn't explain it away or rationalize it. He just owned it and said, all right, we're moving forward. And so that aspect of it was not weird to me. I mean, I haven't, what I really think, because we've said it a few times already, in that this is a very strange thing. And I think when things are strange, you have cops, you have investigators, whether it's local or federal, that when you don't see things that have happened the same way before that you have reps in, it's creating a whole new paradigm on how to go about doing things. And I think this is one of these cases in point here.
And how much game of telephone is going on between all these agencies that are on it right now? Because, I mean, there's a lot that, I mean, more than you guys normally would get, obviously. Now, with even more resources being open from the federal government on this. How much of a game of telephone is this between these agencies where, you know, one agency was there to witness the crime scene when only one was there to do it. So it's okay. Here's what we saw. Here's what and then that one tells this agency over here, and it goes to this one and that one. And by the time you're done, the cameras are broken, and and you know, the story has changed a little bit. And it's not that anybody was like trying to screw it up, but then you have one that's gonna, you know, be a source to Ashley or whoever, and then the story is a little different than what it is. Is that maybe what's going on here, why we have kind of some discrepancies and some fairly big pieces of evidence so far?
Yeah, the game of telephone is definitely most likely a part of it. So what I'm always looking for is who's in charge. Are they maintaining the same central, you know, focal point of the hub, the spoke of the wheel? Yeah. And right now, the sheriff, I think, has done a good job of saying, just by his behavior, he hasn't stated it, but he has, you know, lightly, he's in charge, and it's their local jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And he is getting support from all these agencies that he hasn't reached out for. They called in. So the big thing is, at the executive level is where the friction could potentially start happening, is where the he said, she said start battling for optics and battling for looks. But what's good, though, is at the grassroots level where the people are actually doing the righteous work on the grounds, at least the Bureau, the Critical Incidents Response Group that was dispatched to the site on behalf of the Bureau, those people are very used to being in support roles. They're not there to take over. They're not there to create chaos. They're there to support the lead investigators, which is the locals, which is the sheriff and his people. So my feeling and tenor I'm getting, you know, my wobbles and arcs from people that I'm always reading, is that it's being done well from the sheriff and at that grassroots collection level. Are there going to be hiccups along the way? Yes. Actually, if we're going to compare something that was unusual for a town and community, you know, let's look at the Koberger case when that first broke and that first started happening. Yeah. There was a lot more missteps, I think, in communication with that when it started than this.
And there was also pleasant surprises later in that case as well when we got to learn, okay, so there was a little more method to the madness. There was certainly areas where it was pure madness, but there was more, and that's what I think a lot of times people do forget is that quite often, or at least 50-50, I'll say 50-50. There is method to the madness behind the scenes, and there is more going on far more than you know. And there's reasons for that silence. That's how investigations work. I think the public gets skeptic because there's been a lot of cases, if they're paying attention, that they watch and they had that faith, and then at the end of the day, the curtain's pulled back, and you're like, oh, that's all you were doing? Right. And then that faith goes away. And it's kind of luck of the draw as far as who you have, you know, on your side looking into this.
And rightly so. And that's why every time we have a case like this break, the first thing I'm always looking for is I'm always looking at the press briefings, because what I'm getting from the press briefings is I want to see the front person. I want to see their demeanor. I want to see their tempo. I want to see their transparency. I want to see their communication style. I want to see their knowledge and depth of field from past cases to this case. And the tenor and arc I'm getting listening to the sheriff, I feel good about this investigation. And the great thing, Tony, is that you and I on the show, we are very critical in a lot of cases of how things are covered. But as of right now, I'm fairly confident of what's going on in the way of investigation. They're holding a lot of information back. I'm just watching and observing what he's sharing very tactically, very strategically. I think there's a lot more known here than is being shared with the public. And they say there's no suspects, there's no one that's under suspicion or anything like that. But here's what's going on behind the scenes. You have the detectives that have all these filters we're talking about. And based on their filters, based on their initial interviews, based on everything, they've probably narrowed a broad net field down to a few smaller nets. Mm-hmm. And so what they're now doing is now before they get distracted by the noise, because what we do on the outside is we create a lot of noise, noise with abduction, noise with ransom notes, all this crap out here. And they've got to follow those leads down. But I think these investigators have created these smaller nets out of that large net that they're really focusing on right now to keep narrowing it down, and they're doing this in a few primary ways. As the sheriff said, you got to wait for the forensics and the digital evidence to be analyzed and come in. All the technical side, all the gadgets and gurus, they got to do their side. But the side that you marry that up with is all the interviews. The interviews is where everything always happens. It'll always be the bread and butter of everything, because technology and techniques and all that digital stuff, it gives you the tips and leads and ultimately convictions, if that's what it comes down to. But it gives you the tips and leads to talk to the human being that actually has the knowledge, has the context, has all these tendrils that digital stuff will never pick up. So it's always the digital supports the human element of this. And so while they're waiting on digital, they are deep diving on the human element. So the Bureau, I know, is providing interviewers. All these agencies are providing interviewers. And what they're doing in these interviewers is like you and I talk about all the time. They're looking for unhealthy relationships. They're looking for wobbles and arcs. And they're talking to people. I mean, just like in the Koberger case, if you talk to his coworkers after he committed those murders, there is a wobble, a deviation from his standard behavior. He all of a sudden became happy. Oh my God. Yeah. And so same thing here. So when they're interviewing people, the seasoned interviewers and investigators are looking for patterns. They're looking for healthy versus unhealthy, because happy people don't do bad things. And so they're looking for unhappy people, because not all unhappy people do bad things. But that's where we're going to really focus our attention on. What's that mean to them? So that's what I think is going on behind the scenes. As you can tell, a lot of words means a lot of work.
Yeah, my goodness. And there's a lot, and I want to get into that area of it here in our next segment. I want to get your thoughts in the comments section. If you've not already weighed in, you can do that on YouTube, on our channel, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, or on our Substack, hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is in the description to weigh in on this case. And be sure to press subscribe or whatever it is you are listening or watching us at.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.